Welcome back to another episode of Tales from the Trenches. I'm flying solo today because Natalie is at IT Nation Connect, and I didn't have time or didn't find a co-host for me today. So it's just a solo operation for this week. So hopefully you all aren't disappointed by that. My name's Adam Hanneman, and I have been in the MSP space for a long, long time. This podcast is all about taking stories from our peer group conversations and bringing them out in a larger context, so everybody else can learn from things that we're seeing on a regular basis. So today we're talking about a couple different things because I've had a number of different types of conversations as it relates to both lead generation and finance. So we're going to be talking about some lead generation and some finance stuff today. Now we're going to start with finance because, frankly, it's the thing that's most on my mind. Because in my day job over at Pax8, I am deploying a benchmarking tool that I've partnered up with Service Leadership Index, and I'm working with our members to get their things in order, right? Getting their financial houses in order, so that way when it comes time to turn on this benchmarking, they're in a better spot, right? So I've had a bunch of different conversations from a number of almost like town hall, open office hours type of conversations I had with our partners to talk about all the things that they probably should be doing and should be thinking about. And most of the conversations come back to chart of accounts. If you've not heard me talk about chart of accounts before, you know that I'm a real big fan of getting your chart of accounts set up so that way you can understand what's going on inside your business, especially on the different lines of business that you have, which is a really important thing. And obviously, if you're getting ready to benchmark stuff and you want to use your chart of accounts to compare your revenue versus COGS and all those different pieces. And so as I'm having these conversations and trying to get these MSPs to pay attention to all things finance and like lean into it, many are getting it, right? Many are like, yep, I got it. I want to do this. This is important to me. And so I'm like, I'm not sure, like whatever. And so I'm like, don't want to do it at all, right? I don't like being told I need to do anything, number one. And number two, this finance stuff, I either don't like it, don't get it, don't want to get it somewhere. It's the issue is somewhere in there. And so I want to share 3 short stories about MSPs that I'm talking to, and one is working on getting it, wants to get it, is like leaning in heavily. One, I've had some conversations with him before, and he's done a lot of really good work, and I was very happy to see where he's taking his business to. And one's another MSP that I really haven't talked to a ton, but he's got some people helping him on the back end with a bookkeeper that knows what she's doing and those kinds of things, and has the books in order, right? So let's start with the first peer group member who is trying to get it right. He's got a smaller MSP, sub $1 million, but understands that finance is super important for the growth of his business, right? Understanding what's going on is going to help him grow a bigger, better business. And so we sat down and I said, okay, so let's take a look at your P&L. And we looked at, kind of a P&L for the year, and we just kind of walked through it and said, okay, what's this? And as we're talking, he's making notes, and he's asking lots of good questions, and we're having a good conversation back and forth. And at the end, he's like, all right, this is awesome. If I separate all this stuff up and get ready to go for 2026, is this going to put me in a better spot? And I said, it absolutely will. And also, you're actually doing pretty good with kind of the books, as they're not messy from a transactional perspective, but from a chart of accounts perspective, they were pretty messy. Look, your gross margin, gross profit numbers are pretty good, and your net profit numbers are also pretty okay. So like you're doing okay already, but this is going to give you some more visibility. And he goes, oh man, I can't wait for this. Like you could tell he was like leaned in, right? He really wanted to do this, and he's all about it. And I'm super excited to see that. When I see that with a member who's like, yeah, I can see how this is going to help me, it makes me want to help that person so much more, right? And I'm not really a QuickBooks guy, but I do understand how to read all the different pieces, and I'm pretty good at understanding what's going on inside the business, and then pretty good at communicating all that with the partners. But you just don't want me in QuickBooks. That's always kind of my tagline is like, look, you don't want me anywhere near your QuickBooks, right? Folks like my wife and other people who are that live in the bookkeeping world, that's a job for them. Now, I'm happy to work with folks that live in that space because I can help get things in the right spot. But I'm not like a sift through transactions kind of guy. Anyway, that first conversation was super empowering. And I've had a lot of conversations very similar to that, where people are like, they're leaned in and they're all about it. Because of course, if I'm passionate about it and you're passionate about it, we're going to have a good conversation, right? If I'm passionate about something and you're like, this sounds gross, I just don't want to deal with it, it's a harder conversation to have, right? So that was a fun thing. And the second one was with a member that I've talked to for a number of years. In fact, I one time told him he basically needed to fish or cut bait, which is me trying to not use the more typical idiom here. But basically, I said, look, you either need to figure this billing thing out because he was taking like 2 days to get his billing done, or you need to pay someone to help you get this fixed, right? And I wasn't going to help him get it fixed because that wasn't the expertise that I had there. But basically, I knew he was spinning his wheels on some of this stuff, and he took that to heart. And when we met earlier this week, he showed me his books, he showed me his chart of accounts, and I was like, dude, you are killing it over here. You are everything is neat and tidy, and we can see what's going on, and I can ask you like logical questions about stuff, and you understand the answers because you've leaned in here again, right? Leaning in for me is an important thing with this stuff. And not only that, we pivoted that conversation to price increases, which of course is a thing we do this time of year too, right? The price increases during the Q4 is a thing, especially if you are doing annualized contracts and those kinds of things. And he asked me, can I show you my pricing and stuff? And he showed me this really beautiful spreadsheet, and spreadsheet was rather impressive. Maybe a little bit overcomplicated, but like we're IT folks, so overcomplicating spreadsheets is a thing that we're pretty good at. And he was like, I'm like, well, show me what your pricing looks like for like a basic user. And so he showed me. And I said, okay, well, that seems like it's logical, And I said, show me your time per user per month. Or time per endpoint per month. And he goes, ooh, I don't know if I can get to that. And I said, well, have you been tracking your time? Yeah, of course I have. Okay, then run a time report. And I walked him through that. And I said, look, your pricing looks like it's pretty dead on. Maybe you give your clients a couple, 3, 4, 5% increase somewhere in there and call that good. And take a look at your client profitability one by one. And he actually has that in a different tab on that spreadsheet. And I was like, look, man, from where you were a couple of years ago to where you are today, you should be really proud of the effort you put in. And he's actually getting ready to make his first hire. And I said, look, you have shown yourself, because you don't need to show me, right? I'm not his boss. You've shown yourself that you know what you're doing. And you know that when you hit this mark over here, because he has a pretty good idea about when that mark is, it's like when you hit that mark, it's time to hire that first person, right? And that's coming up pretty quick, like probably January, February, right? And so it's really empowering conversation to have and really energizing for me because it was great to hear and see someone that I consider a friend in the industry really have leveled up his business awareness, right? Where if you think about the typical MSP, we are an industry driven by technical people that like the technical work and not so much the other stuff, right? Not the finance, not the sales, which is of course what we're talking about today. And this is where we all as an industry need to level each other up, and as a brand new MSP, you have to like learn those things over time. And so when I'm able to have conversations like this and have conversations where people are like, yes, let's lean in, let's do this stuff. It's fantastic, and again, very, very energizing for me, which I think that was great. And then the third conversation I had was with a member that I've not really looked at his books before, right? And he's a little bit more mature. He's a multi-million-dollar MSP. He's not huge, but he's not a $500,000 MSP. And he said, yeah, want to make sure I'm ready for this thing. And he's been listening to me talk about chart of accounts for a little while and some peer group meetings and those kinds of things. And so I sat down with him, his bookkeeper, and I said, just show me your books. Let's take a look at your P&L. And I asked some questions, and I was like, look, I have like 3 or 4 questions, but nothing huge and nothing way out of place. The only thing that they needed to do was adjust where their technical employees were hitting, right? That I want all of those above the line. They're all below the line. I'm like, that's the one thing you need to do. And for the purposes of our spreadsheet or for the purposes of this benchmarking thing, if you're not ready to do that, or it's going to be kind of a pain in the rear for you to move that up, either by the end of the year or into next year, you can do that math on the back end. Now, of course, you should do it the right way and officially move those folks up above the line. But I'm like, that's like the one thing that I would have you do here. And I'm like, look, it's clear that you run a fairly mature MSP because you got here without like a whole lot of coaching, without a whole lot of help from people like me or the other PAX 8 coaches or some of those other things. Obviously, he understands the business, right? Clearly. But it was really fun to see and hear like how well he's got his ducks in a row. And this one thing, yeah, it's kind of a bigger thing, but it's not the hardest thing to do, right? So those conversations I've been having a lot of, and that's been really great. Now, on the flip side, I've had a couple conversations that have been rather frustrating where members are frustrated because I'm basically trying to hold them accountable to like understand your financials. Now, understanding your financials is one thing, of course, and sharing them with your peer group is another. And the sharing I could see being a challenge because you want people to maybe see under the covers and see what's going on. But ultimately, being able to share them and talk about them with other people and have them poke holes in your numbers and say, hey, why are you hiring somebody you absolutely can't afford it, right? Based on the data that we're seeing and that you're showing us in your numbers, why are you hiring somebody that's like the opposite direction where maybe you should go, or vice versa, right? You absolutely need to hire somebody because you're burning your team out and your margins way too high or whatever, right? But having conversations around the the overall like lens of your financials is really important. It's how you're going to get better. It's how you're going to improve your business. And if you don't understand them and you're a little bit embarrassed about it, I get it. Absolutely been there myself. And there are things I still don't know. And I've been doing this for a long time. And so if you are embarrassed or don't understand stuff, that's when you get a chance to talk to people like me or other people in the industry that want to like help you out, right? I teach 3 classes at PAX 8 that talk about finances, right? Basically a finance 101, a 201, and a finance for service managers, right? I get 3 separate finance classes to help people get up off the ground. And further, with all of those things, if you want to spend more time with me as part of that financial conversation, I'm always willing to be able to do it. And I'm always willing. Sometimes my calendar is the roadblock there. But the short version of all of this is that if you want to learn more and you want some help, there are people in the industry that are willing to help you. And so I'm happy to be one of those people. And you just need to let me know. And Natalie, my normal co-host, is also willing to help as well, especially if you're in our peer groups, right? If you're in the PAX 8 peer groups and you want help with your finances, just raise your hand. We'll be there to help you. So then let's shift over to the other side of the conversation, which is the one that people seem to want to talk about all the time, right? I've released a number of videos about this on the main channel feed, but also it comes up in peer groups all the time, right? The lead generation side of the world. And I was talking to an MSP just yesterday, and she was like, hey, this year's been kind of tough, right? And I'm trying to figure out what next year's going to look like. And I'm not sure what this is going to be. And I said, well, walk me through the year, because I hadn't talked to her really about her business in a little while because I was filling in for somebody. And she walked through kind of the year, and I said, okay, I understand, see what happened here a little bit. I understand what you're saying. And, what do you think contributed to the kind of lack of sales kind of middle part of the year? And she said, well, a number of businesses in my space or in my market had similar stories from the mid part of the year. I'm like, okay, well, that's a valid thing, right? Certainly that's a thing that can happen. She said, but also I spent a lot of time doing other things. I got pulled into a number of things that had closed earlier in the year, and I didn't want to let those balls drop. And so I maybe took the eye off the sales side of the world, and I hired somebody to help me with the sales pieces. And I said, so how'd that person work out? And he said, well, not really great. I tried to get them trained up, and then they went back to their old job. And I was like, yeah, that was kind of what I was hoping to not hear, but it was sort of expecting to hear. And what ultimately came out of it was the owner of this company, who is extremely smart, decided that the better idea was to hand off sales. And I think handing off sales is a thing that most MSP business owners want to do, right? If I was a business owner myself, I probably want to hand it off relatively soon. The problem is you can't. You just can't hand it off, right? This is not and when I talk about sales, I'm really talking about lead generation. This is you can't hand off lead generation because you don't like it, because that's the worst reason to hand it off. You need to get good enough at it, and you need to remain good enough at it for quite a long time. In fact, if I'm going to paint a picture of when you can hand off sales, is at least like $3 to $5 million is when you can start handing off lead generation for real. Now, you could probably hire someone to help you with lead generation at some point in there, a contracting company or a marketing firm or whatever, but not when you're sub $1 million, not when you're sub $500,000. Heck, I wouldn't even do it until I'm $2 or $3 million probably, because nobody can generate leads like an owner can, right? This is a thing that you need to be good at and remain good at. And even if you get big, right? If you're a $10 or $15 million company and you're the CEO owner at this point, I still want you out there networking. I want you out there shaking hands, kissing babies, and meeting people in the world, because meeting people in the world is the best way to get new sales, right? You need to do those things. And so as I'm talking to this business owner, I said, so what's your plan in November to set January, February, and March up for success? And she outlined I've got a couple of different speaking engagements about some topics that are near and dear to our hearts. I have lunches and dinners and coffees scheduled with a number of business leaders in my area. I have networking group meetings scheduled basically every single week. And I just basically gave her a round of applause and said, hey, that's exactly what you should be doing. And you are absolutely going to set January, February, and March up for success by doing that now in November. Because of course, this time of year can be kind of tough to close new deals. Not that it's impossible. It's just you're a little bit less likely to close a deal, especially the second half of December, than you are the first half of January. So, but the work you do now, right now, today, November 6th, 2025, the work you do today can absolutely set January 1st, 2026 up for success. So that's a really important thing. Then I was talking to a different member, same call but different member, and he kind of was in the other vein, right? This is the owner that's like, I really don't want to do sales. It's not my favorite thing, and I hear this a lot, which is an interesting thing, and I'm not sure where it comes from necessarily, other than it's probably like the thing that they get marketed to the most is that, I need to redo my website, and then sales will come. Right. I just need to get my website done. I need to get it SEOified, or whatever usually the conversation is around that. The reality is that's not going to help you tomorrow. It's not going to help you next month. It's not going to help you next quarter. It's probably 6 to 12 to 18 months before SEO is going to do a damn bit of good for you, even if you hire somebody. Now, if you hire someone to do SEO, it probably happens a little faster because they're more deliberate about it. But the reality is that SEO takes time. And SEO isn't meeting people out in the world. And as he was kind of talking about some of the things he was doing, and I said, hey, did you hear what she just said? What did she just say? What is she doing? He's like, well, she's going to go do this, that, and the other thing. I'm going to go out and meet people and network meetings. I'm like, right there, that's what you should be doing. That's what if you do that, you will get more leads because you're going to be out there with people. If you're going to sit behind your computer and you're going to do your website and you're going to, write some blog posts and then nothing else, then we're going to have the same conversation in March. And you're going to go like, no new leads. What's going on, right? It's important that as a business owner that you actively go out there and work on generating new leads. You can't just sit back and wait it. Now, of course, you want to have a website that generates you some number of leads, but your website's not going to generate enough leads for you in a year to keep your sales funnel full. So go out there and do the things that keep your sales funnel full, right? Go to networking meetings, be there, be present, lean in. You get out of those things what you put into them. Have lunch with people, have dinner with people, have coffee, drinks, whatever that looks like. Meet people out in the world, especially people who are in your target client. Like if you don't have a target client, you have to define that, right? If you market to everybody, you're not going to find anybody. And when you combine your networking meetings with your target client profile, with the networking aspect and like being out there with people in the world, you are much more likely to get leads than you would if with almost any other effort. Then I would also throw out there that as you talk to your clients and talk to other people, ask for referrals the right way, right? There's a whole video about it. I'll drop it up above, and I'll link it in the podcast notes for those who are listening to this on your podcasting app. But the idea is that there are a number of things that you need to do to generate leads. And I have a whole video, actually I have several videos about it. So I'll make sure those videos are available to everybody as well. When you think about finance, when you think about lead generation, those are two things that most MSP business owners didn't get into the business to do, right? Most MSP business owners did not start an MSP to have to go do sales. Most MSPs did not get into the business to do financial stuff. It's not things that we typically would do as MSPs or certainly as computer techs that decide they want to start a business. I certainly did when I started my thing back in the day. If you are going to run a successful business, these are two of the big skills you need to master. And the work that you do today sets tomorrow up for success. So if your books are a mess or you don't understand what's going on, ask for help, get some help. If you are trying to generate more leads in 2026, that starts today. Do some work today to generate leads. This is not cold calls. This is not postcards. This is not email blasts. I mean, yeah, those things can generate some leads, but this is go meet with people. Go meet with other humans. Go to networking groups. Like lean into that kind of stuff, especially this time of year when people are like getting together anyway. Lean into that kind of stuff. It will serve you well in the long run. So with all of that, go take some steps today that's going to help future you have a more powerful and profitable business. With that, thanks for hanging out with me on this solo podcast today, and I will see you all next week.